Thank you guys for tuning in to the Protein Bros podcast. Today we have Matt Karstetter on the podcast. Matt is an entrepreneur. He's a bodybuilder out of Kansas City, and he's just about to open his brand new gym in Olathe, Kansas. On today's episode, we talk about him opening the gym. We talk about him opening a hormonal clinic that he just opened up north, and he also just got back from a trip from outside the United States on a plant medicine trip. Definitely a topic we haven't talked about on the podcast before, but it ended up being a really interesting conversation. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it, guys.
I want to get into a handful of things today. We got the gym opening up. That's obviously the cool one that we're excited about. That is just a few weeks away. Is that right?
Correct. The 29th of May.
29th of May is day one?
Pre-enrolled and current members.
Early
access.
Okay,
so
that's
June
cool.
1st, they'll be
that's
open
dope.
to the public.
So for a couple of days, 29th, 30th, 31st, so 3 days, people that have already paid for the pre-enrollment as well as current foundation members at the other gyms are able to use the new facility first, huh?
Yep. That way, we will rent lockers there. We have some really big lockers. Our locker rooms are ridiculously big, and they have some full-size lockers, so we'll rent those out. There'll still be regular lockers for day-to-day use, but we'll rent the lockers out. There will be a few things like that the early access people will be in there, kind of get dibs on.
Sure.
And then June 1st, we'll open to the public. We'll start giving tours and selling day passes.
How exciting. What's the day pass going to run?
Oh, God, what are they, like 10 or $15?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like the
Super
worst
fair.
owner-employee ever.
Yeah.
I can barely use our front desk computer now.
I'm with you.
I
have the same problem.
I'm the one that started it out. I mean, but nowadays it's like I can barely log in. That's just not what I do.
This whole stuff changes, right? Like
right.
I mean, I don't have the same like reporting tools that we used to have, so I can't look things up like I used to in my head. I don't know how to work the new software or whatever. So
right. But
I
think it's $15 for a day pass.
Sweet deal. Are the dogs going to be available on day one?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
all I want to know. Is Gus and Moo going to be there?
Absolutely.
Love to hear it. We have, man, I have a lot to talk to you about. So we have an ayahuasca trip that you took. Mm-hmm. We have new gyms opening up. You also have an actual gym equipment brand. Mm-hmm. You have a clothing brand, right? You have a CBD brand.
Gym Hemp.
Gym Hemp.
Mm-hmm.
You have the wrist wraps that you guys make with Gym Hemp.
Correct.
You have the
Prime.
Med Spa, right? Is that the accurate depiction of Prime?
Yeah,
Prime Recovery.
Prime Recovery and Wellness. So
Yeah.
it's a med spa, but it's focused primarily on athletic recovery, anti-aging, but there's also aesthetics, like we do filler, Botox, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So do you guys do like hormones and so forth too, like TRT and so forth?
Yeah, that's probably one of the major focuses that we focus on is hormone replacement.
Mm-hmm.
I currently am doing it.
Dude, I saw your before and after, man. You're looking great.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I knew you went months not being able to have any form of test, and so that was must have been a really, really draining, tired few months.
Yeah, I mean, because I was on taking testosterone for the better part of 20 years leading up to that.
Yeah,
as a bodybuilder. Granted, I was before when I was competing, I was at super physiological doses. Now I'm just at hormone replacement doses, but yeah, when you go from taking testosterone for a better part of 20 years at a high dose, your body becomes very much acclimated to that. And so when I came off, my natural production was literally in the single digits,
right,
for the first month or two.
The single digits, man.
Can you tell? So because we probably have people listening to this that don't understand what the negative side effects of that are, and the negative side effects from like a health standpoint and also from like a performance standpoint. Can you go through some of those?
When you drop off like that?
Yeah, when your testosterone levels are that low, which I think clinically low is anything under 300.
Yeah, most doctors will consider low if it's under 300. Mm-hmm. I would say ideal range is probably 700 to 800. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the average guy is going to have as low a testosterone as I did, because when you take synthetic testosterone, your body's natural production over time shuts off, right? So when my natural was shut down and then I quit taking synthetic testosterone, bioidentical, then there was no production at all. And I think think I was like 16 was my first,
Dang.
like the 2 months after discontinuing testosterone, I think my levels are down to like 16. And I did this for fertility reasons primarily.
Sure.
We were wanting to, and as a result of taking testosterone, my sperm count was super low, to the point where I wouldn't be able to father a child.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the main drivers. I stayed off of testosterone for 8 months. As I started out, my testosterone barely was on at all naturally. Over time, it came up a little bit. I mean, I was getting into the hundreds, like I was at like 100.
Were you able to take anything that would be helpful in the form of that production again on the natural side that was helpful?
Like HCG?
Yeah,
I did.
HCG
Well, I had a
maybe,
pretty serious protocol that I've, it's not just, I can't take credit for it because there's a lot of other bodybuilders that have done this. A lot of guys just
been through the same struggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had a protocol I came up with. I thought I had it in this notebook, but I don't. But basically HCG, HMG, glutathione. I think it's taking that nasal pump. But primarily it was HCG and HMG. And that got me up to like a little over 300.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it's hard to sustain that because it's a subcutaneous injection. And it's not like
for our listeners, what's subcutaneous?
So just under the skin.
Okay.
So you got sublingual under the tongue, sub-Q sub-Q would be under the skin, and then intravascular or intravascular and intermuscular.
Intermuscular, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's a lot to keep up with. I mean, I literally had like black and blue on my stomach because I was doing it every other day.
Right.
Which isn't that big a deal.
Are these kind of like an insulin needle? Like it's really short?
Right, like a 29 gauge half-inch insulin syringe. And I was taking a pretty high dose of that stuff, and it worked. I got my sperm count up. I did that for like 8 months total. And I had my sperm cryogenically preserved.
Uh-huh.
And then following that, I got back on testosterone.
Right.
After I got my sperm count where it needed to be, I took a couple of months where I just wanted to see what my body would do without any supplementation, no synthetic testosterone, no HCG, no HMG. And the week before I got back on testosterone TRT, my test levels were 212. So, I mean, I was functioning, you know.
Yeah. That's honestly kind of impressive. I mean, to think about, taking tests for 20 years and to be able to, get your body naturally back to 212. I found that to be relatively impressive to me.
Yeah. I have a doctor friend that I've been working with, and he told me, he's like, you're probably never going to get over 150. And this gentleman was also a former bodybuilder, and he was speaking from experience.
Sure.
And, so I got it to 212, but that's still not a good place to be.
Certainly not, no.
When you have low testosterone, you don't have the motivation. Sex drive is like nil.
To nothing, yeah.
It has nothing to do with the love for your partner. It's just, you're just not focused on that.
There's just not that desire there.
There's no drive. Mm-hmm. Bone density for the older guys, muscle loss, everybody hates that. And I have a high metabolism. I stay lean. I've always been lean. And I packed on body fat like I never have in my life. I got up to like 17%, and I'm usually, without trying, like 10 to 12. Mm-hmm. But yeah, once I got back on, I got in with Prime. I got my blood work done, and that's what we do. You come in there, you get your blood work done. It's like a 64 biomarker panel, and you can customize that as well. So if there's things you want to have checked, they can add that in pretty easily. Then consult with the doctor, and then they, if you need it, they prescribe it for you. For me, I felt a lot better. The one nice thing, even though I had low testosterone, my work drive did not stop. Like honestly, that was my main worry. So I was like, man, I'm not going to, because I work, 14, 15-hour days a lot.
Yeah, we're going to get into those work days for sure.
And so I didn't really lose the drive to work because I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to put a bullet in me if you want me to stop. Like, I love business. I love to work. I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that didn't fall off, but I was definitely running out of juice towards the end of the day, not literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting choice of words when talking about testosterone, but I would start to tire towards the end of the day. I was noticing a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I've been back on testosterone replacement for a few months. I feel a lot better. The training, I still trained while I was low test.
Yeah.
I still got it in, but it just sucked. I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Everything did not.
Oh.
I felt like I had rust all over me. Like I couldn't hardly catch a pump.
Yeah.
My recovery was garbage. I would feel like a train hit me the next day. But
it's weird to go through like something that you've always felt like really good at, right? It's always something you've like done at a high level. I mean, let's throw up some bodybuilding shots of Matt over the years. And it's just like to feel like you're putting in the same level of effort, but the output is just not even close. And that's said, not when we were before you even took tests. We're talking like, way worse off. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're low test. It's just totally
that's not a good one.
You're like, dude, at least throw a good one, But no, man, like you've just had so much success when it comes to bodybuilding. It's crazy to think that, it just must have been a really tough mental battle. It sounds like.
Yeah, that's what it was. I don't suffer from depression severely. I mean, I get down, but that's something that if guys really need to pay attention to if you're going to stop testosterone or if you're low testosterone, it can really mess with your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Luckily for my situation, I expected it. I knew it was coming.
Right. You already identified what was going to happen.
And so I was prepared for it, but it's not to be taken lightly. But yeah, I mean, the training was garbage. The recovery was terrible. Sex drive was terrible. Mentally, I was just not feeling quite the same.
I'm with you.
But, now that I'm back on and I'm not at a super physiological dose, I'm at, I think I'm right around 700. I feel good. I enjoy training again. And the thing is like that before and after picture that I posted after I started working with Prime on my hormone replacement, that was 60 days and it was pretty drastic. And the fact that I was big before and really jacked, my body was so ready to pop off again.
Right.
The first 3 weeks were insane because I felt like I was dying for a while. Like my body was just deteriorating. I had no shape, body fat was up, no motivation. And then the first few weeks, it was just like, okay, this is what we do. We do this again. My body just kicked on and I packed on. My body fat started to drop within the first couple of weeks and my muscle mass went up. So the first 3 weeks were crazy. I don't think that everybody's going to have that exact response within 60 days.
Sure.
I think there's muscle memory that came into play.
Yeah.
And previously I was a higher level athlete. So that came with getting back on the testosterone. But I still think there's a huge benefit for anybody with low testosterone, male and female. At Prime, they do anything bioidentical. So for men and women, testosterone, but you got estrogen, anti-estrogens, progesterone, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that if you have low testosterone, getting your estrogen levels in check can be one of the first things, and also making sure that your bound testosterone and your free testosterone were basically equaled out. Because a lot of people think, well, I should just get prescribed test right away or whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's not the problem. It's somebody's having an issue with their estrogen levels, or there's lots of different things that can go into it.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that injectable testosterone or pellets or cream or anything like that is the first answer.
Yeah.
To anybody's problem, especially young men.
Yeah.
Because if you guys want to have kids, the day you start pinning yourself, taking anything anabolic, you're going to shut down your natural testosterone, which in turn is likely going to make you infertile. However, you got buddies of mine like Brett Wilkins, who's an Olympian, and he got his wife pregnant. There's other bodybuilders that somehow they don't lose fertility at all. So I think it kind of depends on
case by case there a little bit.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are genetically predisposition to handle things differently.
I remember thinking it was so crazy when Jay Cutler, after he got done competing, he started having kids. And I mean, Jay Cutler, 20 years of really blasting.
I'm sure just everything under the sun there for a minute.
The one thing about Jay, though, is he seems to be a little more intelligent than the average bodybuilder.
Yeah.
He didn't completely wreck his body. He was up there battling and beating Ronnie at one point. And look at the two of them now.
Yeah,
wow.
Jay looks great. He posted a picture the other day, and it was like a side by side of the of his infamous photo with the
Quad stomp.
Yeah, the quad stomp, and he looks great. I mean, for being at the age that he's at, you know.
I don't know him personally, but I think he's an intelligent guy from what I know. He knew when to say when on the training.
Yeah.
You know, Ronnie's spine is entirely fused now.
Yeah.
Granted, he was amazing, but according to him and everything I've seen, he doesn't regret it. But
it's hard to watch him move around. It's really hard to watch him move around.
Yeah, it's no way to really live. There's at some point you got to know when the
juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah, there's a point of diminishing return.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
And that's kind of where I was at too. You know, I was, nowhere near on that level. You know, I was on the national level, and I parts of me wanted to keep going down that road, no doubt.
Yeah,
and I still do.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not down. What are we talking about?
Well, I'm not going to compete anymore, and it's a daily, not as much anymore. But for a while, it was a daily discussion with myself. Like, no, you don't do that anymore. That's not what you do.
Sure,
because this, and this.
Yeah, some identity shifting there.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
tough.
That is tough.
Yeah.
It took me about, and that was one of the reasons why I went on the ayahuasca retreat, because it was hard for me to really mourn the loss of that identity, because for over a decade you identify as this competitive bodybuilder, and you're ridiculously strong, compared to the average guy, and you just that's where you see yourself.
It's very definitive. Like, I mean, from purely like an alpha male standpoint, it's like, I know that I'm one of the strongest people in this room. I know that I have one of the best physiques in this room, and you can think that and know that, every day.
Sure.
And when you long before your body goes to a different place, you had to mentally do it first. And that was just I'm sure just a tough place to be.
Yeah. For me, got to the point, I mean, I'm 39 now. I'll be 40 in September, which seems like I was 30 like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
But I had to kind of come to terms with, okay, yeah, I do love bodybuilding, and I am close. I was 10th at the Nationals in 2017. I got my pro card in the WBFF, which in my opinion isn't anything to really write home about in regards to bodybuilding. But I felt like if I kept my foot on the gas, I could have pulled it off. I had a couple of guys that beat me for first place that turned pro. But watching them, they didn't really do anything.
Right.
They never, once you crack that rank, doesn't mean you're going to all of a sudden be rubbing shoulders with the big dogs.
Yeah, turning pro and going to the Olympia is two different things, right? Like competing on an Olympia stage is very different from being a pro, right?
I also think the last, 3 years and the amount of bodybuilders that passed away during that time, it definitely makes you step back and be like, is that worth it?
Right.
I mean, especially when you're talking about just, I think it was 5 or 6 guys, that was in that short amount of time.
Oh my gosh. Starting with Dallas.
And people don't understand to get to, the upper echelons of things. There's lots of people that are like, oh yeah, but those guys are genetically gifted and blah. I'm like, no, dude, they're all foot on the gas. You know what I'm saying? To
on
get
top
to
of
place.
Some genetic gifts.
Exactly.
As well. Yeah. And it's like, you just have to balance. Like you were saying, you said you got a list of reasons why you don't compete anymore. And it's like, you have to just kind of you have to disconnect yourself from that identity that Jeff was talking about, and be honest with yourself and be like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is this going to be worth it long term?
Yeah. Am I getting what I want out of this anymore? And what does the finish line actually look like? Because now it's starting to look like, let's say I turn pro. Now what do I do? Right. Did you listen to happen to Ty Jordan? We had him on the podcast, and man, it was such a good conversation with him.
Okay.
And he had just gotten done with the NPC Midwest last year. So this was last weekend was NPC Midwest.
Yeah.
And, he didn't place in the way that he thought he would, and he had done like a 24-week prep. It was just an extremely long prep for him.
Yeah.
And, he thought, I'm going to go to this local show, and I'm obviously going to do really well, and then I'm going to go on to nationals. And it's just like, it just wasn't in the cards that day. And to have him, on the mic live talking about, just, you could tell he was going through these thoughts for the, not for the first time, but just like he had to reflect on these things. And he's just like, even if I do go pro, he was just unbelievably self-aware. Ty was. He was so self-aware. He knew exactly where he stood. He knew how he felt. He knew what a pro version of him would look like and what he would need to get there. And then he's like talking about how many years off my life am I going to take
to
be able to get there. And he's considering all of it on the mic, you know, and it was just like, man, that's such a crazy thought process, you know what I mean? Because just the incredible, unimaginable for most people amount of work and dedication and intention behind every single decision he's making every day that goes into looking like that.
Right.
Just doesn't, like no one can even understand it unless you've lived it, I feel like.
Sure. I got a lot of respect for Ty too. He's a good dude.
Very much
and
so,
a good
yeah.
bodybuilder.
Yeah.
He's had some struggles just like I did. He can be such a freak in the gym, and he has trouble hitting his mark on stage. That was kind of my MO also. But I think he takes it as far as he wants to, really. He has the work ethic. I've seen him put it in. He doesn't let up. And, you know, a lot of guys say, oh, man, it's like you got to, if you're willing to work hard, go there, you can make it happen. Well, you know, some people can take it there. You know, I don't think that the physique necessarily represents the level of commitment or hard work put in. Not always. A lot of the time, yes. But sometimes your genetics just aren't going to allow it. It just, things don't come together.
Yeah, John Meadows, I feel like, is a screaming example of that.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like I have insane work ethic. I know Ty does as well. When it comes to this stuff, it's not like, how hard can you go? I know I can go that hard. You know, it's calling it going into the other room. I don't know if you guys listen to Bedros podcast.
Bedros Koulian.
Yeah, one thing he always says, and I love it because this is how I handle things too in this regard, is when you get into some shit and you got to go take it to another level. You go in your head and you say, okay, I'm going to go in the other room for a minute, and you literally take yourself out of it, and you're kind of on autopilot. And I think there's people that, you know, or can take it all the way, but even those same guys can go too far. You know, it's like no pain, no gain. Well, sometimes you can do it, put all the work in and take it too far to the point where you override what your brain is telling you to stop, your body's saying stop, and you can just break yourself down.
That point of diminishing return, like you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of guys that could push harder, but it's not always that's not always going to get you what you want.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, you got to know when to call it. So for me, when I was trying to decide, I was like, man, one more run at it. Let's do one more. And got some blood work done. I got my calcium score done where they do like imaging of my heart. And I was also wanting to become fertile. So these are my two main concerns at this point. And I got my score back. And keep in mind, a good calcium score, which is the buildup of calcium or plaque in your heart, is 0. And I think normal's like 0 to 50, something like that. Mine's 344, which I got that back. I mean, I already started my prep. I went and got the scan done, and I was like, I'm going to be good. Forget this. Yeah. I started prep.
Well, you probably argued with the doctor. The last calcium score I got, the doctor was like, dude, you don't need that. And I was like, it's $150. I want it.
Yeah, I paid $50 at Treadmont Imaging over there. Gosh, I'm over kind of by Parkville.
Just up north somewhere.
Yeah, and it was $50 cash, and I got my score back, and once I saw that, I was like, dude, I'm not going to die for this.
No,
and
not worth it, dude.
So I had to I got a stress test done where granted, I had to do this with a freaking mask on because it was during COVID. So they had me run on the treadmill doing all that
with
stuff.
A mask on?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they do an EKG and an echocardiogram.
Yeah.
Also of your heart.
Put all the stickies on you.
Yeah. And I have normal heart function, but to the point where I can't push it much further.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I feel like, could I pull off another run at a show? Yeah. But the risk is just too high for me.
Yeah,
totally.
And when I started in my 20s, I didn't have a whole lot to lose. I mean, I'd go outside and eat tree bark if I thought it would make me bigger. But now it's like I have people that count on me.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where it is a selfish sport. It's self-centered, but for me at this point, it's like you said, it's not worth it.
Does heart disease run in your family?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is I don't know. I eat clean. I always do. I always have. I'll cheat here and there, but I think it's how your body handles cholesterol. Everybody handles it a little different. In college, when I needed extra money, I would go donate plasma or whatever. And they would tell me when they were pulling my blood, they're like, what have you eaten today? There's just so much like fatty substance in your blood. And I just think it's the way my body processes that stuff.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, and I have a high calcium score, and I don't, there's supposed to be some documentary coming out. It's called Heart of Stone. I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about powerlifters and bodybuilders whose hearts are literally calcifying.
Oh my gosh.
And what it means when you have calcification in your heart is when your blood pressure rises, when something happens and your blood pressure needs to rise and pick up, your arteries do not expand and contract.
Yeah.
They stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what caused the heart attack apparently. But I honestly feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Training's good. I just know now, you can't get away with things when you're late 30s, early 40s.
There's also, yeah, right. Even if you're eating really clean, if you're eating in a, hypocaloric state, it's just a lot of calories,
right.
And that can be hard on your heart as well. Yeah, man.
All your organs.
Honestly, just, it's the older you get, it's almost like life kind of smacks you in the face and you look back at, what you did when you were younger. You're like, whew, man.
I really thought I was Superman there.
I thought I was Superman. I was a little bit careless, and you might not have been as careless as me, but I spent some time being weighing too much, and just not taking care of myself, not doing cardio,
Right.
Now I love cardio, but like for a decade to get me to do cardio was miserable.
Yeah, same.
So, and especially with you, if you have a naturally high metabolism, it's like,
Honestly, there was many shows I didn't do cardio.
Right.
I mean, granted, I have a high metabolism. Plus, I was running a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
And it made I didn't have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was with you. I mean, I didn't love to do cardio either.
Are you guys at Prime? Are you guys testing for like ApoE or like any of the genes that are like tell you if you have a pre-existing tendency to get like Alzheimer's or anything like that?
So we don't actively have gene testing right now, but I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. So
super helpful, obviously.
It is because you know exactly you get a blood test so you see where you're deficient, right? And then you get a gene test to see how your body processes these things,
right? And
then you supplement accordingly.
Yeah,
a lot of these guys are shooting blind and they're just taking anything, whatever. They may be supplementing unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So. When it comes to like creatine, glutamine, stuff like that, of course, no big deal. But when you're starting to get into like genetics and you're trying to consider like, do I need to take NAD and all these other things, then you want to have as much knowledge as possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm an owner of Prime. We employ a doctor, 3 nurses, and a paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely not the brains behind it by any means, but it's all about figuring out where you're naturally at, what you're deficient in, and optimizing and slowing down the aging process. That was one of my main motivations behind starting that business, was because now I'm not a competitor, but I'm still super into supplementation and anti-aging, and I'm trying to control the decline. I want to age as slowly as possible.
Yeah. And
so that was my desire behind starting that business, that company. And I think there's a lot of guys that are into it too. And it's just not as well known in the Midwest as it is like on the coast.
Yeah.
Or maybe in Vegas, stuff like that. It's getting a lot more prominent in this area, but it's important. And I think it can extend life to a degree and definitely improve quality of life.
Yeah, man.
Say the least. I was going to say real quick.
Push out the quality of life as far as you can, because, it's not just about how long you can live. It's like, what's my quality of life going to be when I'm 80? Because if it's shitty, I'd rather just die.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, it's just you're seeing, men and women both being able to do, extraordinary things late into their age. And it doesn't happen without intention. And so that's, like paying attention to your hormones as a bare minimum is a great way to be intentional about it. Mm-hmm. But I want to just make sure I remind the listeners, like when they see Matt's progress of those 60 days, that was for him to get to a healthy level. And so like, most people are in that range on their own. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so like, I think it's just important to annotate that, yes, of course you've had lots of predispositioned variables that help with, your results that you got. But it's important, I think, to annotate that you didn't do anything super physiological with your TRT. And so it just goes to show you, men, go get checked, man, see where you're at.
Sure.
It doesn't cost very much money to get a full blood panel. What is it, like $100?
So
$150?
It's $300 for your blood work, consult, and basically your prescription, more or less.
Oh, so you'd even get a prescription out of it too?
Yeah, and you can pick
whatever you need.
You can pick it up in house. You can have it. You can get injected in house every biweekly if you want to do. Most people just have it mailed to their home.
Sure. Man, that's interesting, dude. And so with that being said, like this is something where, you know, Matt, you've got a handful of gyms for now, right?
Right.
And you're constructing one. And just to be clear for everybody that doesn't know this, Matt also has a huge background in construction. And so you're not just, you know, subbing out all this and let somebody else build it. You're in there with those 14 and 15-hour days, like you're saying, and you're building the gym yourself, you know, with a lot of help along the way, I'm sure.
Right.
You know, I know you're not going to take all the credit, but it's like, it's your vision, you know, it's what you want to do with it. Right. And you're doing a lot of the grunt work when it comes to it, dude. I see you manning that forklift.
Yeah.
What was the crane that you got going on in there to get the equipment in? What's that called?
That's a all-terrain forklift telehandler.
Of course.
Or booming forklift.
Yeah, we know what those are. Totally.
Well, you know, I've been in construction. Out of college, I was in college when I had a few different jobs, but I started building fences on the back of these contractors' houses for them. They hired me on. Then eventually I got hired on. They asked me to come frame for them. So I started framing, did that for a while. And then by the time I graduated, I started my own construction company. And I do enjoy construction, especially now that I'm doing less and less of it. I enjoy it more. But it was a means to an end for me.
Sure.
It wasn't because, I just want to build houses or build, you know, skyscrapers the rest of my life. I dig that stuff. But that's not my true passion. That's not what I'm doing this because it gives me opportunity to pursue what I really want to do. Because I didn't have the money just to get right into these businesses. You know, I had to be able to add value, build in equity, literally. And so,
as in, like what Matt's saying, guys, is when you start a business, you are going to have to pay for some form of build out. If it's going to be any kind of establishment where people attend or go,
right,
physically visit, right? So if he's building a gym, someone's going to have to build out that gym and make it look like a gym.
Right.
And if he does it himself, it saves him a lot of money.
Yeah, it does.
I'm saying, like, in the sense of it's a variable where you're talking about building value there. It's like he's quite literally building in equity because now he doesn't have to pay somebody else to do it. And so though it costs money to make and do and so forth, but if you're doing it with your time, there's a lot of savings that can be involved there.
For sure. Yeah, you're definitely exchanging time for money, no doubt. But, and you know, everybody says don't trade your time for money. But there's certain situations that it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's the delayed gratification we're talking about there.
Yeah, I don't want to do it like that forever. And I've been subbing out more and more and more. But there's certain things that I need to do or I want to do. Some of it, you know, and there's certain things that I don't always draw blueprints. A lot of times this is just in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell the guys working with me, they're like, what is he doing? Like, they don't get it. And I can try and explain it, but it kind of comes together. And I'm not saying that's the way to do it.
Pull up that smoothie bar you just built. It was like last post on the foundation of Olathe. Isn't it the last post?
You know,
yeah. Watch it. Have him film it. There you go. Look at this. Is like from your head to, you know, there's no blueprint for this, right?
No.
This is straight from just like, hey, I thought about it. This is what I want to do. And then just from nothing to something.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind.
Smoothie bar, welcome entrance area, right? Your front desk. When people walk in the gym, they're going to see this.
Yeah. This is kind of our community area, our smoothie area. And I mean, I got a little bit of experience. I've built 4 of these now, so I should be getting a little better. But this one has turned out really well. I enjoyed it.
Beautiful, man.
I enjoyed doing it as well.
Yeah, that's the thing that I would say that you can't. Everyone likes to give the advice as to, you know, don't trade your time for money, and you know you should be putting your time towards other things. You know, hire somebody out in those situations, but it can't be understated what kind of joy it can bring people when you start a project like that and you see it through to the end and you know that you did it, right? They say one of the most fulfilling jobs in America is farming, and it's because you plant it in the ground, you tend to it, you watch it grow, and then you harvest it, and it's like you've seen through the whole process. And a lot of times in business, there is not like a see-through process once you're like starting a business. Like for us, it's just a constant thing. You know, it's just like we're continuously growing and, you know, we're growing as far as numbers go, but it's different than like actually starting a location, building it yourself, watching people come and sit, you know, where you built. It's just a different kind of joy. And like I said, I think that, you know, life is about more than just money and about trying to maximize money. There's lots that go into, you know, a successful life that are outside of monetary things. And I think that just because you enjoy doing that, I don't think that that's a bad thing at all, man. I think a lot of people need to reflect on that and make decisions for, you know, themselves.
Relative to their own lifestyle or whatever belief system that you're going with that's going to serve you.
Sure.
Is the way you go there. And I think like what you're talking about is you're on gym number 4 and each one I know has taught you lessons, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so you're in this position now where once you've, you know, completely ironed out that, you'll be able to, you know, crank out more quickly, you know, based on the fact that you know what matters and what doesn't as much. And
what's the
all
thing
of it matters, but it's just a matter of what's the percentage of like, hey, you know, there's all these levers that we can pull, right, to make a decision on what matters. And it's like, okay, where do we want to put more of our emphasis, more of our focus? And like you're starting to recognize, I'm assuming, where the real meat is of the business model, right? There was at one point where McDonald's was selling barbecue and fried chicken, and you know they were like 80% of our business is just, they don't. I thought they retired it, dude.
No.
Pay attention. I don't know.
Once a year.
But bottom line is that they found 80% of their business was just off of fries, shakes, and burgers, and so they got rid of everything else.
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing that young Matt building out the Manhattan Foundation thought was really, really important that now Matt building out Olathe realizes is not important
Can't
at
believe
all?
I spent so much time on this part, you know, whatever it may be.
Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys would, the only way this podcast grows is by sharing it, liking, subscribing on any of the platforms that you're listening to, specifically on YouTube. So if you guys are enjoying the content, if you listen on a regular basis, we would really appreciate it if you took the time to do those things for me.
I don't know that there's anything that wasn't relevant. There was a ton of learning involved there. I think one thing, this isn't exactly answer to your question, but I think one thing looking back, it's like it's a lot of stress in construction, regardless whether you're remodeling your bathroom or you're building a commercial building. Depending on your level of expertise and experience, there's going to be stress no matter what. And I think my problem is but a blessing at the same time. I've never had enough money to do what I needed to do. Never have. The bank always gives me less than I asked for. Always. They've been great because they shouldn't. Technically, if it was me on the other side of the table back then, I probably wouldn't have given me any money. Mm-hmm. But I got funding, and it was really nerve-wracking because I had to try and figure out how to pull this off with limited funds because I probably needed 20, 30, 40% more than I actually had. And that brings a lot of stress into it, too. That means when you're working with these subcontractors and they try and do a price change on you, it's not just something you don't want to hear. It's like you have no ability to handle that.
You can't incur it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not a question. So that can bring a lot of frustration and a lot of difficulties in regards to the build out. Over time, my budgets have gotten better and better, and I've been able to relax a little bit more. But that's something that I was thinking about, you know, when I was building out Olathe. It's like I could still use more money. We're self-financing quite a bit of this project, which is a blessing. But this pressure is not quite as high because I do have the budget. Now, could I use more? Yeah, but I would just keep getting more and more ridiculous with everything, you know?
Yeah, do you find yourself making decisions because you're self-financing? Are you still as gung-ho with money spending? You know what I'm saying? Or are you, the opposite. Like, are you actually finding yourself being more gung-ho versus in the past when you're like, I can't incur that. I just can't. And so it taught you a lot of lessons there, or have you found yourself like slipping from that grip, if you will?
What I'm finding is that I'm able to sub out more and not have to build things completely from scratch myself. There's like, for example, I'll put benches in the locker rooms, and normally I would build those myself, but for an extra $150, I could have one. I could purchase it online and have it shipped in. Well, in the past, that just wasn't an option because I didn't have any money. Well, now, is it a great use of money? Should I have built it myself? Debatable. But it frees me up for time. Like, that's what it's given me. It's allowed me to pull back, delegate, hire somebody else to do it, and focus on other things. Like Olathe, it's a really big space. It's almost 25,000 square feet. The gym floor, we have, almost 12,000 square feet of rolled rubber. Wow. And I thought I was going to end up having to do it myself. I didn't, thank God, because I've never done rolled rubber. We always use 4x8 sheets. Mm-hmm. That was before we took possession. But yeah, it gave me the ability to hire that out instead of having to do it myself. Because there's not too many things that we can't do or can't figure out. But it's not always the best use of time. So having enough resources, especially in regards to financial resources, is pretty critical for growth. Because what I've been doing has evolved slowly over time, and it's worked, but it's not the model that's going to get me where I want to go long term. So it's constantly evolving. The same destination, just the vehicle you take to get there changes over time.
Different path.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's listening to this that might be interested in starting a business, or they might already have a business, what do you look for in a contractor when you hire a contractor? Like, what are the stipulations that you have?
So it'll vary. If I own all my other properties, they're standalone. Olathe is a shopping center, so I lease that space. Yeah. So when you ask what do I look for in a contractor, sometimes that's not really up to me. My lease can dictate you have to hire this person has to have $2 million in coverage, this, that, and the other. There's stipulations that the landlord puts in place because it's not just your space, it's theirs. So that can dictate who you hire. Mm-hmm.
Just like personal qualities that you look for in a person.
One thing that I like is owner-operators. At the same time, if it's not the right owner-operator, it can be pretty frustrating. Because if they're owner-operator, then their overhead generally isn't quite as high as a lot of guys. They're your point of contact. They're the guy that's going to be doing it. So it's great. You can really work with them. You don't have to talk to 3 different people 3 different times necessarily. At the same time, if they're overloaded, overextended, then or they get sick, or they have to go, family member dies, that's it for the day. Like, they don't have guys that step in their place usually a lot of times. So there's pros and cons to both, but really I can work with pretty much anybody if they do quality work and they have integrity. Like, I understand things happen. Prices can change.
I'm laughing at the integrity part because I'm like, it just seems so common though. Like that seems like it'd be easy to find.
The lowest integrity freaking.
In our personal experience with it, like whether it be our personal homes or with our construction, when it comes to our stores, it's like, dude, the amount of construction companies that we've dealt with that don't do what they say they're going to do is every one of them.
Well,
I'm asking you this question for myself, obviously.
Sure.
We're like, who are you dealing with? Because everybody just lies.
So for me, it's hard. You're not going to trick me because I know how to do it.
Right. When that's supposed to be done. When that's supposed to be done. When they're loafing or if they're really trying.
Sure. I understand what it takes to get the project done from A to B and then some. However, it's pretty common to find guys that you'll do one job with them and you'll never hire them again because there's so much work. There's not that many guys that are working with their hands anymore.
Yeah.
There is, but I think we're going to see in the next 5 to 10, 15 years that skilled labor is going to be scarce. There's so many younger guys that think they need to be influencers or they made $50,000 in crypto and they think, well, that was easy money. If I go work with my hands, then I make $20 an hour. That's not worth my time now.
Right.
Well, you got lucky.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
there's no real skill involved there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, nothing wrong with influencers. I think if that works for you, great. But there's something to be said about being able to build things. So I think, the next 10 to 15, 20 years, we're going to see an increase in cost of skilled labor and less people doing that job. So even if these housing prices come down, if you're building new or you're having remodels done, the cost of labor is never going to come down. In my opinion, we're never going to see it lower than it is right now. It's only going to get higher because these guys can do that. They can pretty much tell you what you're going to pay them.
Right.
And what my experience has been, I'm a commercial contractor also. I'm a real estate agent, but I don't really do anything other than my own deals. But what I think you're going to see is just all these prices rise, and these guys know that they have you when it comes down to, well, who else are you going to hire? Because everybody else is booked out 6 months. You know what I mean? They would rather bid 10 jobs ridiculously high and get one of them than bid, those 10 jobs right on and get all of them. Mm-hmm. And I can understand the appeal to that, but that's not a long-term strategy for customer loyalty. Mm-mm. You'll bite your bottom lip and pay it that one time. Be like, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to plan this out a year ahead next time so I don't get bent over by this guy. Mm-hmm. But certain times, you don't have any other options.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, I've had to deal with that as well. But again, that's why I always have the fallback. Well, okay, I'll do it myself.
Mm-hmm. What's going on with your, you have this thought process of Olathe. You went from Liberty all the way down south, right? Like this is not a close by gym. And so my real question is you have a way of doing things to this point. What could a foundation member from Westport or from Liberty, or even if someone traveling to KC from Manhattan, what should they be excited about when it comes to the Olathe location that maybe they're not getting in their gyms that they're in currently?
So all the gyms should be, very comparable in regards to equipment. And the way you're treated by our staff is second to none, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
So I'm trying to keep the experience that you have at each gym similar, but unique at the same time. We cater to the local demographic a bit. So Liberty, there's a lot of families. We do have a kids corner there. Mm-hmm. Westport, it's a lot of young professionals. We don't have a kids corner there. Smaller building as well. Olathe, it's a bigger space. We have more cardio than we have in any other place, and a kids corner. At the same time, while we try and honor the local demographic and give them what they want, I started out in bodybuilding and powerlifting. That was what my very first gym. That's all we really did. And I quickly realized you need to appeal to the masses at least a bit if you want to have a scalable business, and actually make money. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm never going to lose the
core, if you will.
The core or the authenticity of what started it. So that's why you'll see our powerlifting rooms. We dedicate spaces to them. And that's why you see bodybuilding equipment that you're not going to see at these other commercial gyms. I don't consider us a corporate gym by any means, but we're not a box gym either, or a professional gym, in my opinion. Kind of low staff, low pressure, but we have all the unique specialty equipment that you've ever seen under one roof. And the relationship between our staff and our members is amazing. And the member-to-member relationship, too. It's similar to how you guys operate your S2. Like, we put a ton of emphasis on community and customer support, whereas some of these business models in these gyms, it's like they get as many people in as they can. They lock them down to the long-term contract if they can, and then they kind of forget about them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that doesn't make money, but that's not the only objective that we're trying to accomplish. And that's probably the most fulfilling thing I see is the relationships that my staff has together and how the members have and then with the staff too. It's really, really cool to see that. You'll see people that are friends that would never be friends outside of the gym. Not that maybe they would, but it's very unlikely they would cross paths and interact. And so it's really neat to see those kind of odd duck relationships happen.
Yeah, the gym facilitates those, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of support. I see a lot of people get support, like not necessarily lifting, just in their day-to-day lives. They feel like they have some people that they can count on.
Yeah, I mean, a genuine community.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Can you talk to us about the structure that you have as far as ownership goes in the new location?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Lucas Becker is my location partner in Liberty. Lucas started with me in Manhattan. He was a Kansas State
intern.
Yeah, he was an intern through K-State with the foundation, and then we're bringing on some more interns, and so if you do a good job as an intern, we generally offer you a position. And he came on, worked for us in Manhattan. He wanted to come to Kansas City. So he came to Westport, and then now he's in Liberty, and he's a location partner there. I think he's been with me for like 6 years. But Lucas is going to do well. I mean, I've come to learn that it's not a whole. How should I say it? It's not necessarily all about myself by any means, and the business will go much further if you can lock arms with the right people. You guys know that completely. You guys have teamed up good and hard. So Lucas is the backbone of Liberty,
right?
And he's going to do really well. I mean, he'll make over 6 figures this year.
That's awesome.
And it, that's a good amount of money for that job. I mean, that's way higher than what if you Google.
Yeah, dude, I mean, this guy's only a few years out of college.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, wow.
And also, I mean, just in the gym industry in general, you don't hear, it's hard to work yourself up into that pay range.
Right.
Not to mention there's plenty of gym owners we know that don't make that much money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, his salary out of Liberty is higher than mine.
Right.
That being said, it makes my life so much better.
Right.
I'm so much, I don't worry about that location. I don't worry about any of my locations because I got good managers in all locations, and that's crucial.
Yeah.
I was talking about resources in the past. My resources that I could always use more of is money, time, and good people.
Yeah, quality.
Yeah.
Quality help.
And you get those 3 resources in line, you can run through a brick wall.
Yeah,
you're unstoppable. So, yeah, that he is my first location partner there. I finally got to a point where we could do that, and I plan on doing that with all locations moving forward. That's going to allow us to expand at a rate that I just couldn't do by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm a really big control guy, and I had trouble getting to that point a little bit because nobody would do it like I would do it or care like I care. But once you get over that and you get the right people in place, things just move so much more efficiently.
80-20 principle. Most of the time it's like you can, if you you're right, no one's going to do it as well as you could as the owner, but if you give people a piece of that ownership, you're going to get guys that'll do it pretty close.
Right.
And it's just relinquishing that and being okay with that, which was hard for me and Jeff. Me and Jeff took every transaction in Overland Park for a year. We worked open and closes for a year before we were like, all right, so I guess somebody else can sell protein to this person.
Yeah, to be fair, the plan was to let other people do it after like 4 months, but it took us another 8 months just to be comfortable with somebody else taking that interaction when they would come in the door. You know, for yourself, what have you been doing? I mean, to have someone to be trusted, to operate, such a large scale facility like that. This isn't an Anytime Fitness, this is not nothing to knock a smaller gym like an Anytime Fitness. They're great. It's just a little bit harder to manage, I think, such a bigger facility. You got locker rooms, you got bathrooms to keep clean, you got, kids corner. I mean, it's just a lot. Do you have these, what are you doing in the sense of personal growth? Like, with your staff to get them to learn how to do these? Like, how are you putting these systems together right now?
So we have some retreats that we do, but
ayahuasca ones.
Hey, that's a personal decision.
I'm with you. Hey, I'm just saying
that's not for everybody.
So it's quite the leadership trip. Yeah. See what I did there? Trip. Sorry.
You never know what you're going to get after that.
Good job.
They may all move out of the country after that. Who knows? No, I mean, we have weekly meetings, and we're doing a lot of reading together. Whenever I get on a project, I'm pulled in a few different directions. So some of the managers now are leading the manager meetings.
Sure.
So I'm not always present, but they've been reading books. We've been assigning some reading, going over. Some managers are taking lead roles on that. But we just read, what was it? The Road Less Stupid, and that is a book that basically talks about ownership, being an entrepreneur, owning and running a business. And I don't know that every person, every business owner wants their managers to think like that, but this makes them consider it from an ownership role. And I want these guys to, this is your, what would you do if you own it? Think about it like that, because you consider things differently. Mm-hmm. And that was a good book, but they've been doing a lot of different reading. And we need to get, I think it's definitely room for us to do more growth internally with our staff. It's been kind of balls to the wall when we're in growth mode. So sometimes that can get pushed to the wayside, but we've been doing some good reading, and I've kind of let these guys manage each other to a degree, keep each other accountable. And then we'll have a regional director at some point that'll kind of manage the managers, because I'm having to step back more and more all the time, and that's by design. And honestly, it's going better than I thought. And there's things that occur when you do that you didn't even expect, because you always think like, I know what needs to be done, but there's other people that have great ideas too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, I started this, I have the vision for it, but these guys are really the ones that are fueling it.
What's an example, just to give an attaboy to somebody that's been working for you that had an idea that you guys are instituting now? That's like a good example of what you're talking about.
A lot of it is procedures and stuff. There's a lot of internal stuff we do, but like checks and balances, how
holding people accountable.
Holding people accountable. Our trainers are independent contractors, so they're not technically staff. So it's how do you handle them and how do you handle your actual staff? Lucas has some really good ideas on that, and he'll make decisions on things without referencing me on it. And early on, that was hard for me to take, but now he's doing it. I'm like, man, that not only was that a great decision, but he didn't take any of my bandwidth. I would rather them. I always tell my staff, they said, we're going to have problems. That's not a bad thing. That's part of business. What we want to do is limit the freak out time. How long are you going to take? Oh my God, I can't, what's going on? If you need to take a second to step into the other room to freak out, take 30 seconds, come back and get straight into damage control. How are we going to handle it? And then when you do that, before you come to me, figure out what would you do to fix this before you come to me? Because I want you to tell me what you think the solution would be or could be. Because 90% of the time I'm going to say, yeah, that's exactly what I think too. And so when you get them, that's probably one of the best things that we've done with our managers and our staff. It's really easy when something happens just to send a message in Slack or call the manager or call me. But if you have to think ahead of time, okay, it puts them in a spot where they actually think what needs to happen rather than I'm going to report this issue. It's I'm going to solve this issue, and that's been kind of game changing. And it's empowering to the staff as well. And they make a lot of decisions, and that's the way it needs to be. I can only do so much. Like I said, I love construction for the most part, but I can't be framing up smoothie bars and answering all these questions and putting out fires everywhere else all at the same time. So getting them to stand on their own has been really good.
Mm-hmm. It's cool to watch. You got to give people freedom to make mistakes, right, and empower them to make better decisions. And a lot of people surprise you that way, right? Yeah, that's what it seems like. It sounds like that's what's been happening, and that's a great thing to hear.
Yeah, I just need to find more quality individuals to team up with.
I'm with you.
And I just, we do get good applicants. Our staff now is awesome. Like I really care about every one of our staff members on a personal level and business. And I think that's important, but it's hard to find people all the time. And,
what's with that? Because we run into the same issue. I feel like, having been in the fitness industry for a long time and now having owned a business for, 6 years, it's only getting harder.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we have it better, you guys in S2 and us in the gyms have it better than like restaurants.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's still some prestige in working in the gym, working for S2.
I think there's a big thing that, what you're offering, and this is the part that's like scary to me, and that is that, we both of our companies are offering, somebody who's getting started from the very bottom, the ability to one day have ownership in their very own, right? And there's just not a lot of other models out there like that. And when I say there's not a lot, I mean like you can count on one hand the amount of other models that are like that.
Right.
And, one of the most successful guys I ever met, his name's Marty Prather, and he was a Domino's franchisee out of Southwest Missouri. And he started off as a delivery boy at 18 years old. And I said, like, there's no way. I couldn't believe it. I was an intern with the Cardinals at like 19, 20 years old or something. And I'm having this conversation with the guy who's like the head of all of Domino's in like the Southwest Missouri region. And he's like 50, 55 years old, and he private flies to every single St. Louis Cardinals game in St. Louis, every single home game. He just flies up to St. Louis in his private jet. And I'm like, how the hell did the delivery boy?
He's like, lots of pizzas, dude. Lots.
He said, I wasn't too smart. I just followed the plan. They were really, really good at Domino's, and I got in when I was young, and there wasn't a lot of Domino's around here. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And, I think there's a lot of swallowing of ego that has to happen at a young age to say, hey, in order for you to make your mark on this world, it doesn't have to be from, you proving to everybody how special you are with your own model or your own idea. You could just do a really, really great job at this and then take the freedom that financial freedom gives you to do whatever it is that you want to do and make it your impact, whatever it may be. But it's just funny that, like,
more important, it's
so much more pride and ego, it feels like, on like a young person's level. Like, I don't want to be a big up at Domino's. And it's like, dude, I'm pretty sure everybody would trade places with Marty right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That we're saying that.
Really, that's about how long can you, and we talked about this a little earlier as far as delaying gratification. How long are you willing to come home smelling like a pizza, put, 1 million miles on your car, have your family be like, I can't believe you're still delivering pizzas, you
really just managing that pizza place still?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's just, it's doing that over and over and over again. And then over and over and over and over and over and over again. And if you're not willing to do that, sometimes success is just about, not quitting, that's, we talk about that a lot is a lot of it's just, pushing through the times that you want to quit. And that's where success is, it's just on the other side of that. And so,
especially in models like we're saying, like that we're in, where it's like, you do have the ability to go as far as you personally want to go, right. And that's, being okay with it. But yeah, it's funny whenever we're talking to a young person who, they're just like, yeah, I want to become a millionaire. And you're like, okay, well, we have people who've done that in this model. So what are we doing here?
Right.
Right. Like, yeah, you can do that. We've done it. You know what I mean? So what are you doing? Right. And then they're like, I'm just not making enough money right now. I'm going to do what, you know what I mean? Just insert job that pays $5 more, whatever it may be. And you're just like, do you understand like the long term, like where that's going to go? What's the ceiling there? What opportunity vehicle, if you will, are you going to get in that's going to take you as far as this can take you?
Right.
And so, yeah, delayed gratification, we could say it over and over again, but you're saying like when you meet people that are quality, it's like we found personally, I feel like, is that we have to create that. We have to create that mindset. We have to instill that in them because it's not instilled in them anywhere else. It's not very easy to come across people with that level of more or less awareness of what's possible, sure. Right? We're told like if this, then that our whole lives. And when it comes to business, it's not that easy, right? It's not, it's if you work your ass off for a very, very, very long time without any kind of fully guaranteed expectation of what you'll get in return, eventually you'll get that and then some, right? Versus the difference would be, if I go to school and I pass my classes for 4 years, I will get a bachelor's degree. And if I get a bachelor's degree, there is some form of guarantee in my mind that I've been given over the course of years and years and years of conditioning that I will get a quality job that will pay me a quality amount of money to where I will be able to, work through the week, have typically the weekends off, have some paid vacation. And all of that sounds pretty damn good, right? I can't even like blame anybody for wanting to do that. It's just like, but where does the becoming a millionaire thing? That's not obviously everybody's goal. Not everybody wants to, equate success with money, and all that's good and great, but it's just very difficult to find people that know what they want at a young age anymore to me.
Well, and you can give them the outline for it. Say, do this, this, and this, and you will likely get that, and they can get motivated, get excited about it for the moment, but then never implement it.
What it looks like is very different, right?
Yeah. Because and the things that it really takes, it's not something you're going to be showing out on Instagram because it's not glamorous at all. It's not most time not fun at all.
A lot of times you build that ability to master the mundane in things like, bodybuilding or, athletics or
all the monotony,
because it's like, bodybuilding's not always fun. You know what I'm saying? Lifting weights and doing,
it's like 6 months of no fun for one day of fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something to be said about discipline in athletics that can go into other aspects of your life.
Directly transfer over.
Yeah. Here's a fun question for you, Matt, because this is a really like, we could have an entire podcast on just this topic, dude. You were one of the few bodybuilders that I know that was a bodybuilder first, and then were able to take that discipline and apply it to entrepreneurship or how they make money. The amount of broke bodybuilders in this world is incredible, right? Like, I don't say broke as in like they're not literally homeless or something. I'm saying that like they can't apply that same level of discipline that they do into their craft, into their job. Does that make sense? I see so many bodybuilders that just struggle on the aspect of just making a living from it.
Well, to be honest, I started my first company before I was, I guess about the same time I competed. So it's kind of started around the same time. So I wouldn't say that bodybuilding came first necessarily, but it was all out of necessity for me. I started a construction company because I wanted to own my own gym.
Sure.
And so
think of it like this. There's a lot of bodybuilders out there though, that when they make enough money to where they're like, oh, awesome. Like I can support myself or my family, and I make enough money to where I can, I'm making just enough, if that makes sense. And so unfortunately we see so many bodybuilders where their gym goes out, or their boutique goes out, or their training gym goes out. And it's purely because they just didn't have anything extra on top. And I feel like you've just so far pushed past, what would be just in form of comfort for most people to just make enough to live. Right. I feel like most people just stop kind of right there. That's where a lot of people just get into that complacency realm where it's like, hey, I'm making good enough money now. I'm doing pretty good. I don't need to push as hard.
Yeah, I think, and this isn't just bodybuilding or business, I think you need to diversify no matter what. There's so many of these guys that put all their eggs into that basket, and that was probably one of my downfalls in bodybuilding, was that I chose work part of the time. Some years I would focus on work, and other years I focused on bodybuilding. Probably why I wasn't great at bodybuilding. Probably why I was good. But here I am going to be 40, and I have a fairly diverse portfolio for a guy my age. I have investment properties, I have cash flowing businesses, and I have retail products, to name a few things. And I think a lot of these guys, they're like, man, it's all or nothing with bodybuilding. Again, when they say take it there, if you can go that far, take it there. It's like, what's the point I'm trying to get out of here? It's these guys, they say, I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder. I'm going to personal train in the meantime. And that's all they do. Well, then you blow out a knee, or you're no longer relevant in the sport. And, you can make good money personal training, no doubt. But unless that's your passion, I don't think that long term that's going to be something you're wanting to do when you're 70 years old.
Yeah, you're finding that it's easy to make that money while they're bodybuilding or whatever, insert sport. But it doesn't seem like they love doing that aspect of it, right? It's just the way that they're making money so they can support their love and passion, which is the actual, the doing of the sport, right?
Right.
The process of the sport. And so, yeah, you wonder, like, when is that road, when eventually those roads collide and we see it, and sometimes people are prepared for it. It's like no different than you watch an NFL player or another, professional athlete have to go into the real world, if you will, right? And you watch them either do really, really well because they prepared for it. They knew what they were going to do, life after football or whatever it may be. And then there's ones that don't, and it gets really sad. And so it's hard to watch sometimes. Me and Kyle have been doing this now, been in the fitness industry, paying attention to, the other people that are in the fitness industry now for over 15 years.
I feel
so it's been crazy.
Honestly,
to see
most bodybuilders now, they get it enough to understand that like that is that they need to be mindful of their life outside of bodybuilding. I'd say most people are better about that now. Not as successful as you, because there's I would say that's uncommon in bodybuilding for sure. But I feel like more and more bodybuilders now are caring about things outside of just bodybuilding, or they're at least setting themselves up for post bodybuilding life, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing to do too. Definitely have some sort of side hustle.
Yeah.
Cause I see a lot of these guys.
The Kai greens and grapefruit days are just not the same, as they used to be.
I don't know what you mean by that. What are you talking about?
Just Google it.
No, you Google it.
I don't need to. I just talked to you about it.
I mean, yeah, you can OnlyFans.
Why would you not Google it, dude?
Yeah, you can
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans and make $1 million.
Everybody does that.
And honestly, like, good for whatever bodybuilders are doing that. Like, dude, make your money now. That's all I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but is that true success?
Yeah,
because I think
defined by that person.
You're selling your soul a little bit.
That's my point.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dude, let's talk about ayahuasca.
Okay.
Let's. So
many things to discuss on ayahuasca. Let's get specific. What do you got?
Well, so here's the thing. I don't know very much about ayahuasca except for you go into the jungle, you drink the potion, and then you throw up. And this is all I know.
This is
so.
Plant,
can you please?
So let's call it plant medicine, right?
Sure.
Let's be respectful of what it actually is. I'm calling it a potion. It's not some like mythical wizard handing it to you. It's a shaman, right?
I'm pretty sure that is the ayahuasca, governance board going to come after me for calling it a potion?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, it is a potion.
So
of some sort.
Okay.
You don't have to go to the jungle, obviously, to do it. That's how I did it. But you can get DMT, which is the active
ingredient
in ayahuasca primarily. You can get it on the internet.
What's the difference between like a DMT or ayahuasca versus like people that have done like acid, LSD, mushrooms, things that have psilocybin?
Okay, so I've done LSD or acid,
sure,
which I think is a terrible name for that drug because it's super chill in my opinion, and mushrooms. They're similar experiences, but for me, the ayahuasca was so much deeper, and it's probably the way I went about it. But you can get that stuff online. I do not suggest. I don't think it's for everybody. I think it's a personal decision. And I think it's something if you've been thinking about for a long period of time, then maybe it's calling you to do so. But I would never do it without supervision, without people that are experienced.
The shaman in this case, correct?
Yeah, we have a host who puts it on, and then they have the shaman, and then they have people that go around and check on you the whole time, and they're playing music and all this stuff too. But they're really making sure you're staying safe because it's pretty wild, no doubt.
What called you to do it?
And I'd been thinking about it for years, and for me,
I guess what answer were you looking for?
Every day, I'm always seeking God. I'm always seeking my Creator. I want to have a deeper connection, and that's my primary motivation. I struggled with this because I wasn't sure if it was something that was considered false worship. You know what I mean? I thought about it for a few years. I had a friend who went and did this with the exact same place I went to. And I asked him about it. I was like, what was it like? He's like, well, I found God. I was like, that's all you got to tell me. And, cause he wasn't religious before. And so, yeah, I went to Mexico it's in the jungle between, Tulum and Cancun. It's like, I can't remember what that area is called, but, I was there for a week, and it was myself and 11 other people. I was the only first timer. So I was on a special diet for a couple of weeks, going into it. Basically it was like a vegetarian diet.
Prepare your stomach for such, I guess.
Yes. Well, and just, get yourself cleaned out a little bit. They didn't want you drinking alcohol or eating a bunch of proteins. It was mostly plant-based stuff and getting your digestion up and running. Then I got there the first day. We did, what do they call it? It's a tree frog sap off their back, right? What is that called?
Some tree frog
poison off the back. And what they do is they burn you on your body, and then they put the tree frog poison on you. And it's, what it does is it's not a hallucinogen. They call it combo is what they call it out there. So they did combo, and it can also cause anaphylactic shock for a short period of time, but it pushes toxins out of your body apparently. And they had us drinking obscene amounts of water, and then we purge. And so they prep you for a couple days before you actually sit with ayahuasca. and we did it the first. So we did that the first day, and then the next day, I think we were doing like meditation, yoga, stuff like that. And the third day we sat with ayahuasca during the day, so we could see no, I'm sorry. The first time we did it at night, so we couldn't see anybody. Yeah, that's combo.
Cool. So we're taking ayahuasca during the night the first time doing it, right?
Yeah, that way you don't see everybody and all that.
Feeling more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's not like you're just sitting there for an hour. We're there for 12 hours straight. And when
you trip for 12 hours straight?
I'm not saying you're tripping the whole time.
The experience that was 12 hours long.
Yeah.
So we went into this temple that was built for it, and you go in, and there's a bunch of prayer before and after, which was partially I was conflicted with because they're talking about Aztec gods, this, that, and the other,
right,
as well as Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But I know who
you had a narrow focus,
is, and so I felt a little bit off by doing that. But I didn't let it like ruin my experience. But wasn't exactly my thing. But so you go in and it's about a 12-hour experience, and you're not done until the last person's done. They don't let you leave, or you're not supposed to. It's super disrespectful. But yeah, we went in, and you take it's like a big shot.
Sure.
It looks like it's like brown. It looks like it tastes like soil and coffee mix.
Straight gross.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, earthy to say the least.
Yeah. So the first time, most people do 1 cup, and then you sit, and within a half hour to an hour, you feel it start to come over you, right?
How many cups did you take? Because you said most people, and I know you. How many cups?
So
did Matt
I
drink?
said I did it. I took 3 cups both times. So most people on the retreat took 2 cups total. I took 6.
So was everybody waiting for you at the end of this?
Well, the weird thing was that I don't know why, but it took me quite a bit.
Yeah.
I took the first one, and like about 20 minutes in, you could feel it start to come over you. And when you think about ayahuasca, you're thinking about like visions, and they call it sacred geometry, where everything's like triangles, and like that. Well, the first time
I heard you see these little beans. What do they call them?
Beans, like BEANS.
Beans, like
beams of light.
No, like little figures. Like what are they called?
I didn't see any of those guys. That would have been kind of cool.
I'm sorry, but let's go back to your experience there.
Yeah, all right. So really, the first night, after about an hour, I just got like extreme sense of gratitude. I was just like so grateful for everybody in my life and all these experiences. You don't have an enemy in the world. All these things, like, man, all that stuff that I was stressing about doesn't matter. It does. I was thinking about pretty much everybody who's had a impact on my life, and I was so appreciative of it. And I'm like, man, I just want to tell them how much I'm thankful for that. I didn't really get into the visions the first time. Well, they realized that, like, how you feeling? I was like, oh, I'm all right, but I hadn't vomited or anything, so they gave me another cup. And then I just got deeper and deeper into it. And, ayahuasca means to purge. And so to throw up. And everybody throws up. Every time I sat with ayahuasca, I would puke for about 5 minutes. You just over your bucket. They give you a bucket and you vomiting. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't that bad. Mine was 5 minutes. Some people are doing it the entire time. There's guys, I'm not kidding you, that were puking for like 6, 7, 8 hours. Just, like a demon's coming out of them. For whatever reason, I felt great. I had a smile the entire time. It was, when they say you sit with ayahuasca, you're only seeing your own self. It's not like somebody's going to come from another planet and tell you things. You're reflecting on your own thoughts that maybe you're not necessarily bringing to the surface.
Sure.
So it's supposed to be great for people with addiction, drug alcoholics, stuff like that. Or past trauma, people with abuse.
Yeah. The stuff that you've been burying rises to the surface, and you face it, if you will.
Right. Luckily for me, I have dealt with most of my past trauma, so I didn't feel any confliction. I was super grateful the entire time. And like I said, I didn't really vomit that much.
So what did you want to get out of it, Matt? And then what did you find?
Well, so
Did you find it?
The second time I went, well, the funny thing was after the first time, the guys that were puking the whole time, we would sit the next day in our reflection circle and talk. And everybody, they're like, and I mean, I'm telling you guys, I saw these guys like not under their own power, losing it. Like there was a demon coming out. I definitely think you are in the presence of spirits at that point, but it's not just good spirits. I think you're opening your world to evil as well as good.
Like genuinely fighting demons.
I genuinely believe that it's like you get to take a glimpse behind the curtain of reality for a moment. And the things you see and you are 100% certain of at that point in time, as time goes on, you talk yourself out of it. Your logical mind talks yourself out of it. For me, that's been huge. Like I was so certain of things at the time, but now I'm like, no, there's no way, dude. But these guys, we'd sit in this reflection circle the next day and they'd be like, oh, it was such a beautiful experience. I was just bliss. And I'm like, what? Bro, you were vomiting for 8 hours. Like that looks like hell.
Yeah.
Like literally guys seizing on the ground. Like it was crazy.
And it's like, man, we paid money for this. We signed up.
Bro, and
that's unbelievable.
Those guys, we would talk to him, and the one guy, he was, one of the things I said in group or in our circle before we did it, I was like, I'm really seeking God, and I'm having a little trouble mourning the loss of my former identity as a bodybuilder. It's been a couple of years, and I just have trouble letting it go. And this guy, he was a former professional football player, very short period of time. He was a really successful college athlete.
He'd gone through something similar then, yeah.
Well, and to a degree, and so he and I, we were talking, and things that were surprising. He was a guy who had always had the ego stroked his entire life. Always, man, you're the shit. You're that guy. You're that guy. Well, he also has had severe depression, cocaine addiction, and just always felt worthless. And he came to find out when he did ayahuasca, he was sexually abused as a child by his dad. He had no idea. And he's like, I had no clue that had occurred in my life. He's like, but I could see it. I watched it. Now I know my mom knew about it. Like it uncovered all this stuff. And he's like, I'm starting to understand why I have these feelings, why I'm prone to addiction, why I was so deep in depression, why I've been on antidepressants all my life. While everybody's telling me that my life's so good, I've never felt like it was good at all. And he's like, I think it's starting the process of acknowledging some of your underlying issues, to bring that to the surface.
Sure.
So that was wild. It was wild to sit in a circle and see everybody's going through this stuff, right? And I was the only newbie there, and so they were all briefing me on it. This, that, and the other. Do this. It'll be like this. Bro, I sat there. I adjusted, but I sat there on my mat with a smile on my face the entire time. I was happy as you couldn't believe. The second time we went in, it was almost like the shaman felt the challenge to take me deeper because I took more medicine than the shaman did. Mm-hmm. And so the second time we took our first cup, within 20 minutes, he's like, here, do another one now. And that took me, like, I purged, and then boom, like the 3D geometry hit me like you would not believe. Like we were in this temple that's built for this. The lid lifted off, and like everything was connected. You look out the door into the jungle, you see leaves, but they're all in triangles now. Mm-hmm. It was wild. It was the craziest thing I've ever experienced.
Man, for someone who always loves control, like you were saying, like you're always like present to what's going on at all times, and like you're always on, you're always like aware. Mm-hmm. Was it weird to just like everything to just completely fall away for you like that, and it just be like this completely different world in reality?
I didn't know how much I needed it.
Yeah,
I took a nap for the first time in years while I was there. I napped during the day. It was just like like I'm not the one running the show. It was great. It's really difficult to explain totally, but I mean, it's a different experience for everybody. I think trauma impacts it in a big way. I think you need to be intentional. It's not something you do as
see what happens.
Yeah, it's not tourist attraction,
recreational.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you really, because there's been people that what it does, it dissolves your ego immediately. Like all of a sudden you're like, yeah, it's not that you don't value yourself. you're not that important. You're not
Yeah,
that.
you recognize how we're just all, you know.
Everybody is just as important as you are in this and the other. There's nothing. The ego is gone, and I think that's hard for a lot of people. I've known of people who have gone and done it and who have left after the first sitting because they can't handle it, because they're so used to being
in their own minds. Special.
Yeah, amazing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a pretty humbling experience. I don't know if I would advise anybody on doing it, to be honest. I think it's definitely a personal decision. I don't know if I'll do it again. I feel conflicted about it because I do feel like I was able to look behind the curtain, and I do know that there is definitely a God and there's a higher power. But I feel like I was playing with fire.
Sure.
I felt like there was evil all around too. It was pretty crazy. I felt like I was very grounded in my faith. I know what I believe, so I was able to work through it. But I don't know that I think if you definitely if you're like schizophrenic and like that, no chance. Don't ever think about it. So it's a personal decision. I think you can work through some things. I think it benefits most people with trauma that they need to work through that they haven't worked through, addiction. Outside of that, I think there's other ways to seek God. I think it was, I was hoping to have a conversation with God, I think. And I felt close to him, and I felt very grateful. One thing I did come away with is that even though we think we have free will, everything's predetermined. We just think we're making it up our mind on the way. Now at that time I was certain that was the way it was. Now I've kind of talked myself out of it a little bit. But by the way, I've never spoken to anybody about this other than like 2 or 3 people. So now we're telling everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think it's awesome that you're, the more you explain it out loud, I think the more sense you can make of things.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. So yeah, I sat with it twice. I was there for a week. They said you need to take a couple of days before you go back. So I stayed at a resort and I just kind of processed everything.
Dude, you're on your own out here.
Yeah. And the thing is I took so much. It's not like it just gets in and out of your system. Like I was having visions for 3 days after. Guys, I woke up at the resort the next day freaking out in the middle of the night. It's 4 a.m. And I thought, oh my God, I just spent a week with demons.
Yeah.
I was like, and they did a podcast. They did some interviews, a documentary while I was there. And I was like, God, I was on this documentary and I talked about my experience. And I think people are going to see that and think they should do it. And I'm like, I need to get them to take me out of the documentary. Like I just gave the worst advice. I was tricked. That was the devil. Well, process for another day. And I'm like, no. And I thought for sure it was the devil. Process another day. I'm like, no, that wasn't what it was. You're just kind of tripping out. I came home. I was sleeping in my own bed, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm in the freaking temple. But I can see my bathroom. And I'm like, what the hell is it? I was so scared the 2-3 days after the experience than I was in the experience.
Right. One was expected. The other one was not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had so much in my system that I was tripping for days afterwards. And it's not like you can just turn it on, turn it off. Yeah. It's like it happens when you're not, and I've never done it before, so I didn't know what to expect. But that was intense, and I wasn't sure. At that point, I really regretted it. And then I came to kind of process it more, and I don't regret it, but I don't know that I would do it again.
Yeah.
Certainly not 6 cups, you know.
Oh, dude.
My gosh.
Oh, they looked at me like I was just like a legend around there. I was like, yeah, no, I'm badass.
Yeah. You know what I mean? They start calling you by like a nickname, you know what I mean? Some like spiritual word. Like
the thing was, they're like, I took more than anybody they've ever seen there, and I just sat in my spot and I didn't really move. However, they do encourage you to go walk in the jungle, so I did that, which is super cool.
Yeah. Okay. From like all the things you're talking about, by far that sounds like the coolest thing.
Well, you're barefoot in the jungle.
Yeah.
And
one with the earth.
Before you're like, oh gosh, rocks everywhere. Not when you're on ayahuasca. You don't feel a damn thing on your feet.
I bet.
All you do is feel the trees, and it's almost like, people take ecstasy.
Yeah.
And everything has this sensation. Well, like it was the most beautiful night I've ever seen. The leaves had just had different texture. The crazy thing when I was there, I saw 8 tarantulas in the 1 week I was there. It was like mating season, so there's tarantulas everywhere in this place.
That sounds like the worst. That sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
But
I'm terrified of a giant
It's a triangle tarantula.
Well, I don't like spiders either, but
you're like, hey, buddy.
Well, they apparently
come on and climb on me.
That's what all these guys do. They go grab them. They're like, oh, they just got a bad rap. They're like, they're the teddy bear of the insect world. I'm like, I don't think they're quite teddy bears, but
there are people that have pet tarantulas though.
Tarantulas are pretty. They're not very like dangerous, are they?
No.
Yeah.
Certain, I mean, only like there's only like a handful that would be, but like
I'm not an expert by any means, but I know these weren't dangerous.
Yeah, the tarantulas. So when I was in South Africa, we were talking about spiders, and I had never heard of this before. I was talking to them about some, would you be scared if you had a spider come into your hut? And our tour guide was from a village and grew up in a mud hut, and he was like, he's like, spiders, we don't knock down spider webs.
Right.
Those are there to protect us from all the other bugs. Mm-hmm. Spiders are the most helpful.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I've never been introduced to that before. So it's just interesting topic.
So let me tell you one last thing about the ayahuasca.
Please do.
So, like I said, I didn't feel like I had any underlying turmoil I needed to work through. I was just literally there trying to get a closer relationship with Christ, with God. And I was at complete peace, probably the most peace I've ever been in my entire life during the sessions. And when I was just relaxing around the compound, like I said, I was able to take naps. I haven't done that in forever. Completely grateful for my existence. However, the day I'm supposed to leave, I get a call, and Paul Cheney, my staff member in Westport, got hit by a car on his motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Bro, I got ripped out of bliss to straight just like grief.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, from then till now, it's been probably one of the hardest times of my life. It's like I feel like God kind of bolstered me for a little while. And this was almost preparing me for all this stuff. My mom has cancer now. Personal life's been pretty rough. And so it's like I felt like I had this extreme amount of bliss, like a lifetime's worth of bliss in this week.
All that gratitude, yeah.
And then just completely caught off guard and pulled the complete opposite direction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I don't know if for me, it's seeking God. And I don't know if that was him preparing me for what I had to deal with coming, or maybe not, but that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
And it was an experience, no doubt, and I went from one end of the spectrum to a complete opposite without any kind of notice. I got that phone call and just 180.
Mm-hmm.
What do you, how do you, first off, man, that's horrible as far as what's been going on, but in the situation, how do you feel like you'd react differently had you not done this ayahuasca trip? You ever thought about that?
I haven't, no. I don't know that okay. No, I probably would react differently because I think I have a little more patience with things. I don't try and force as much as I probably had in the past. I realize certain things are just going to happen. It's, you got to be content when you have great things going for you. You need to be content when things aren't great. Because it's never going to stay that way either way, and when I came out of that, I had more appreciation for people around me, my staff. That's when I made the decision to bring on location partners. I was drop the reins a little bit and bring on, share the pie more. So I think, it did change my perspective. The only reason I want to do it again is because I want to get back into that bliss again, that appreciation, because I'm super grateful, no doubt, but nothing like I was.
Right.
It's like a whole nother level. And granted, there's a lot of serotonin released during that. Same thing with like LSD and mushrooms, stuff like that. But I think you ascend, you see yourself from a different perspective. Like I said, I feel like the veil was pulled back for a moment, and I got a glimpse to see what the world, how it was really, what it's really about. But I don't think when you're born, your body releases DMT. And then when you die, your brain you release DMT, but that's the only time. So I feel like I don't think we are equipped to handle the full knowledge of what our existence is. And I think that's why with me and my faith, I think I don't think we can comprehend everything that our existence is. And if we were able to, it'd blow our mind. We'd lose it, right? So I think what this does is it gives you a little glimpse into that, and it's a lot to take.
I can only imagine.
I think certain people, I think, Jeff, I think you'd be well suited for it. There's other people in my life that I ask them, like, I just wouldn't, you know. So.
I spend a lot of time being introspective, and I've been a lot more introspective over the last few years of my life, but yeah, it's not something I've attempted or tried or, you know, felt led to yet, but it sounds like an interesting place to be. You know what I mean? Like, there's definitely lots of pros and cons that I've considered just from hearing you talk about it. And it's like how, you know, becoming more and more, you know, gracious or having more self-awareness, I don't think is ever a bad thing, but make sure that's what you're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. And sincerely appreciate you sharing that with us. We had no idea that, you know, that this isn't something you've talked about often. And so it's nice to get that side of you as well, Matt.
Sure. I mean, I've told my wife and I've told my sister, and that's about it. And for a while, I wasn't going to talk about it.
You and I have had several conversations since you've done it, and we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, it takes a while. You just don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah.
You know?
And did, you know, it's just, you know, what happened versus how you feel are two different things, right? And so it's like, you know, feel like, I'm sure you had some, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's like there's got to be some pressure associated with, like, what are people going to think about this if I tell them, you know?
Sure.
Because it's not something everybody understands.
Right.
You know? And so if, you know, like you said, it's not something that you exactly found what you were looking for, but maybe you found what you needed at the time. And it sounds like, you know, what trials life's thrown at you since kind of proves that. So I'm super psyched that you shared that with us, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome.
We're going to skip over our typical sign-off question because we've already asked you on a different podcast.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Dude, we sincerely appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah,
and,
man.
We're excited.
I really appreciate it. I feel like the knowledge you were able to give us as far as, you know, scaling a business, as well as, you know, the ayahuasca trip. I mean, that's just interesting stuff. It's something that we definitely have never talked about on the podcast before.
Sure. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, you know, this is the second podcast I've done with you guys, and I always, you know, I spend a lot of time by myself. I think I don't share a lot of things to a lot of people, so I don't know that always comes out exactly in a sequence that's understandable necessarily, or the way I would want you to portray it. So, if anybody has questions about some of this stuff, I'm happy to give my opinion. I definitely don't have all the answers to most everything.
Give out your Instagram handle.
Yeah, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is super simple. It's Matt_Karstetter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the interest that you guys have in, you know, supporting us small businesses in the fitness industry. Like I said, I'm kind of an introvert. I don't usually get out there and talk to a lot of different people on this level. So take it for what it is, and don't take it for what it isn't. You know? I'm not telling you to do anything necessarily. It's just this has been my experience. But
for sure,
yeah, I mean, hustle hard, delay gratification. Do things not only for yourself, but for others. You don't have to be seen all the time. If anything, show yourself less.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, people aren't gonna. Some people will support your vision, but most of them won't. Most of them are going to throw a wrench into the works. You try and sprint in one direction, they'll throw a stick in front of you. So I'd say, you know, you can have ideas, you can have plans, but don't spend all the time talking and telling people about them. Just do it and then explain how you did it.
For sure.
And then hopefully you're more articulate than I am and people understand you a little better. But
yeah, I think this is extremely valuable advice to leave it off on right there. I don't think we need to say another word, man. Right. So if you guys didn't already, rewind and listen to that one more time. That's some really, really strong words of advice. And again, we appreciate you being on here, brother.
Thanks again, brother.
Likewise. Thanks, fellas.
Ooh, that was a good one.